The person who just doesn't work in this movie and kept pulling me out of it every time he was on screen, and this was often, was Tom Hardy. Nowadays, it seems that every single project that he stars in, for whatever reason, he's adamant. He's determined about just to do the most ridiculous cartoon voice for his latest character. He sounds so fucking silly in this movie, especially in the first half of the film. It's like, what if we had Bugs Bunny as the leader of this motorcycle gang?
I'll come back for you.
Let's go ahead and move on to my review for the Bikeriders. I know I've constantly put this review. I've paused this review several times just because I just hadn't had an opportunity to go to the theater and watch this movie. It's been a little difficult trying to see it just because of the fact I've just been so busy with these streams and content creation and just covering a lot of TV shows recently, like, you know, House of the Dragon and The Boys and some of these other animated shows I've been watching. But I've finally been able to check out the Bikeriders. Now, you know, before getting into this review, I have gotten a bit of a crash course with the bikers subgenre this past week with films like Stone Cold and Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man. You know, movies I wouldn't exactly say are good, but definitely very entertaining and very funny. You know, I gotta be honest, I actually really enjoyed Stone Cold. You know, the supporting cast and the action scenes are amazing in the film. I mean, you have every vehicle and every, you know, structure in that movie apparently is just made out of TNT and gasoline and just explodes. It's like, this is awesome. I really liked it. Really, the only problem with the movie is that the star of the movie just can't act to save his life.
You gotta say for yourself this time.
You gotta clean up on aisle 4.
But in any case, you know, those movies did put me in the right mood, in a good mood to see a film like The Bikeriders. Like, yes, I am now ready to see The Bikeriders. Give me them biker boy movies. You know, I have to admit though, the film has been in a weird place, I would say, these last 2 years. It's written and directed by Jeff Nichols, who's done some really great movies over the last decades. Stuff that I really enjoyed, like the coming-of-age crime thriller Mud with Matthew McConaughey. Such a great film. One I highly recommend if you've never seen a Jeff Nichols fan. That's a great one to start with. And he's also done the dark psychological thriller Take Shelter with Michael Shannon. He actually did that one before Mud, and it's not as and again, not to say that like Mud is exactly, you know, light fare, but it's a dark psychological thriller for a reason, and it's a very interesting movie. I've also been looking forward to the film to a degree just because it does have like a solid cast of people, the Bikeriders. You have Jodie Comer, who's in a big leading role. She's the leading lady. You have Austin Butler. You have Michael Shannon, and a few other recognizable faces. You know, it was originally supposed to come out, I want to say, in 2023, the tail end of 2023. But it was delayed because of the SAG-AFTRA strikes. And apparently 20th Century Studios and Disney, I guess, didn't have a lot of confidence in the film and the project overall, and they ended up just selling it to Focus Features, and now it's finally has its release date. You know, I have to admit, like, a lot of this kind of made me a little less than excited to see the film. Plus, I kind of just found the marketing for the movie to be fairly lackluster. And also, you know, we got to talk about the ridiculous cartoon human in the room chat, Tom Hardy. Just doing another Looney Tune voice was a little concerning to me. But I have seen the movie, and I can now speak of its quality. But let me provide you with a brief synopsis before getting into the details that don't know about this picture, this supposedly fine picture. Initially taking place in the late 1960s, a young woman falls for a member of a Midwestern motorcycle club that evolved from a gathering place for outsiders and would-be rebels to a sinister criminal gang. So this film, for those that don't know, is a very, very loose adaptation of a photo book of the same name that depicts this outlaw motorcycle club that was founded in the late 1960s. You have Tom Hardy's character of Johnny, I believe, who is the president and the leader of the club. And Austin Butler is one of its main members of the gang. And his wife is played by Jodie Comer, and her name is Kathy. At the top. If you were hoping this movie to be something akin to the cinematic version of The Sons of Anarchy, or be as entertaining as something like Stone Cold and be extremely over the top but fun at the same time, I'm sorry to say that this movie is really neither of those things. Now, that's not to say that the movie is bad, like that it's awful or anything. It's not. But it has some major problems. It has some flaws. I think the majority of the cast is doing the best job that they can with the material that they're given. Austin Butler, who plays Benny in the film, he's continued to prove he's just one of the best, rising stars in the film industry, today. And he also shares, I think, some great scenes with Jodie Comer in the movie, who grows increasingly worried throughout the film as the club starts to grow more dangerous and violent in the film's second half. And you also have, I feel like, some really good supporting performances as well with Boyd Holbrook, who I've always been a big Boyd Holbrook fan. Even if the movie he stars in isn't great, he's usually pretty good in it, and he tries his best as I live and breathe the Wolverine. He's like the main mechanic of the club. And you also have an almost unrecognizable Norman Reedus, who's looking like he just walked out of the Walking Dead apocalypse. Okay, what if his character from The Walking Dead just kind of like aged 20 years and had like the biggest, bushiest beard and hairpiece on for whatever reason, just let his hair grow out. That would be his character. Or honestly, he kind of looks like a member of Toe Cutter's gang from Mad Max. And he's entertaining as well with the screen time that he's given, that he has. And the rest of the cast, the characters, the supporting, secondary, tertiary, motorcycle gangsters, they do a good job of making this biker gang feel real and, of that era. And you have some great costuming and makeup for some of these people. It looks pretty good. Now, getting more into the negatives, the person who just doesn't work in this movie and kept pulling me out of it every time he was on screen, and this was Tom Hardy. Nowadays, it seems that every single project that he stars in, for whatever reason, he's adamant. He's determined about just to do the most ridiculous cartoon voice for his latest character. He sounds so fucking silly in this movie, especially in the first half of the film. It's like, what if we had Bugs Bunny as the leader of this motorcycle gang?
I'll come back for you.
And it's weird because, like, later on in the film, he eases up on his ridiculous cartoony accent, which I'm like, are you supposed to be from the Midwest? I don't even know where he's like supposed to be from. But then later on, he does start to sound more normal, and I can only assume he just eased back on the voice because maybe it just wasn't working. But and if that's the case, then he probably should have just dubbed himself over later in post-production, instead of just kind of sounding differently in the film's second half, or not as ridiculous, not over the top, and not as crazy as Bugs Bunny in the film's first half. Still, I think he's by far the weakest character in the movie, and he was distracting in the worst way possible. I also think the marketing of the movie is a bit deceptive. This is before, like, the movie pitches itself as this is the rise and fall of this motorcycle gang. And we mostly see that rise, and I would say a little bit of the fall. Most of the movie is before, like, of this time period in the late 60s and into the 70s. A lot of this is before, like, a lot of just motorcycle clubs became synonymous with organized crime and violence. We don't see as much of that stuff as we want to, certainly as I wanted to. For those thinking like, oh, this is kind of going to be like the Goodfellas of biker movies, right? And we're going to see, like, look at this idyllic lifestyle, these people living how they want to live and hang out with each other. And it's like, what's better, what's better than living life as a member of a motorcycle club? Nothing. Similar to, like, Henry Hill. Like, for the longest time, ever since I was a kid, I always wanted to be a gangster, right? The problem is we don't see as much of that criminal lifestyle as the film clearly is pushing in its marketing. It's more of a slice of life movie. That's really what this is. It's a slice of life movie with the bikers just kind of hanging out, talking to each other. Yes, getting into fights with like rival biker gangs and stuff, and just recruiting new members who come and go and have different ideas for how the club should be run or what they should do. And it's kind of dull, especially in the film's middle, I would say. The second third of the film is the weakest part of this entire movie. And you just see all these twists and turns, coming, way before they inevitably happen. You can predict so much of this movie just by watching the trailer, how this relationship plays out, like what's the fate of like this character they introduce. Like it all happens. It also doesn't help, despite I think the actors doing the best job that they can with the material that they're given, these characters don't have as much depth as you would want. Austin Butler, he is a rebel without a cause. That's about it. Jodie Comer's character, she is concerned. From beginning to end. That's her whole thing. She wants to get out of this lifestyle. She wants to take her husband Austin Butler, with her. It's like, and that's kind of the gist of their conversations and points of conflict throughout the movie. Tom Hardy is a cartoon. He's doing a funny voice. Any opportunity that he can. Can you understand him sometimes? No. It's honestly like a struggle to understand him. But that's just a part of the life of the biker. It doesn't matter what he tries to say. It's what he does in the moment. That's what it means. It's like, okay, if you say so, and in between all that, you get these characters that come in and out of the film at certain points. It's like, oh, it's that guy or it's this person, recognizable kind of character actors, and they have a little bit of screen time with the main leads, and then they pretty much just leave the film or they come back at some other parts. It's just it doesn't do anything surprising. I think it emulates that period of time. From the in the 60s, the late 60s, and it does it well. And you have these actors who I think are doing the best job that they possibly can with this material. It's just that the material itself, like the story they're trying to tell, just isn't really interesting at all. It's honestly dull. Also, the film's way too long. I think it's at 2 hours, or honestly, it feels over 2 hours because it is so slow in so many points. Like there's so many conversations where these bikers are just talking about the same goddamn thing about their lifestyles and how it's how everyone should live. It's like I just don't really fucking care. It's not interesting. And what you're showing doesn't even seem to be that fun to begin with. So yeah, it's a movie that I think has a lot of promise, but you need to have a writer come in here and just kind of gut the main story and do something entertaining. I hate to say this, chap, but this film needed some of the ridiculousness of a Stone Cold or a Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man to kind of save it. Like those movies, for as ridiculous and bad as they may be in a variety of ways, those films have more going on in terms of its story. It has twists and turns that you just don't expect. Like, I didn't expect to have the majority of the cast be like the heroic characters all die in Stone Cold, but they did. Like everyone that you expect to meet their end, like meets their end, or something bad happens to them throughout the film. Like of course, right? And yeah, it's just kind of like this lackluster slice of life film, with a bit of a criminal element in there, but it's not at the forefront as much as the marketing is pushing. It's just not, and that's frustrating. Of the movies of Jeff Nichols that I've seen, which I've seen a good portion of his filmography. You know, Take Shelter, Mud, Midnight Special, Loving. I would say it's been quite some time in between. Like Loving and Midnight Special, he did 2 movies in a year. Came out in 2016. This is his first movie since those films, and quite a bit. So it's been like, 7 years. I think this is probably his weakest picture yet. And I mean, it disappoints me because I think he's a great filmmaker who has told these really cool crime stories, and also stories that feature characters that have a lot of depth and are suffering from psychological trauma. And this movie tries to do those two things, but neither are kind of at the forefront. Neither are as interesting as they're being presented, as they're being presented. It just all kind of comes across as lackluster. Like, this movie is, I think, only able to get by based on the performance of its actors, who I feel like are elevating the material and just the aesthetic of the film, which is good. But yeah, I think this is a disappointing movie for myself. But others might end up liking him. I mean, people who I think are maybe into biking culture, or like these motorcycle clubs, the history of them. It's like, this is their humble beginnings before they kind of went into that, darker, more violent direction. I think you might get something out of it. But yeah, if you are a huge fan of stuff like Sons of Anarchy or those types of TV shows, which honestly just do this, I think, material just infinitely better, then I think you might leave this movie pretty disappointed, or in most cases, bored. But what about you guys? I'm actually very curious. The Bikeriders, again, it's not a film that's exactly blown up the box office. There was a lot of people's radars. I can honestly understand why there wasn't as much enthusiasm behind this movie after seeing it. But I am curious. Did you actually really like the movie? Were you more mixed to disappointed by it like me? Or did you just downright hate it, all of it? Not even like Austin Butler or Jodie Comer's performances in the film. As always, please let me know.
5 minutes later.
What about you, Che? What'd you think of the Bikeriders with their motorcycle leader, Bugs Bunny? I thought Boyd Holbrook was Dan Stevens the entire time. Oh, shit, really? I think a few people, when I went to go see it, was early morning screening, a few people were like, is that Norman Reedus? And honestly, it was hard to tell at first because he just has this huge wig and this huge beard on. But I was like, oh, that's him. You can tell by his eyes. He has like the most tired-looking fucking eyes I've ever seen on an actor before. That's the thing. I thought the movie was decent, but I could picture myself loving it. They gotten rid of Tom Hardy and replaced him with literally anyone else. Michael Shannon is right. Oh, yeah, Michael Shannon. That's true. Yep. No, that's a good point. Mm-hmm. And he's good in the movie. Yeah. Let's see here. Is there a lot of downtime? Yeah, I mean, that's what most of the movie is. It's them just kind of hanging out with each other, and I think you need to have those scenes so you can build character and these relationships between these guys, right? I think that's totally fine. But there's just not a lot that happens. They just keep doing that over and over and over again throughout the entire film. They're just kind of having the same conversations. It's like, guys, what are we doing here? This is kind of dull. Space Cowboy, I thought the movie was fine. Butler and Comer were really good, but Hardy was cartoon. Yep. Lisa never heard of it before you mention it. Lisa says, I'll pass. Holbrook and Stevens did play brothers one time. Yeah. This was the Monday Mystery Movie last week for your Space Cowboy. Next Monday at this time. Bet the Mystery Movie was Fly to Me to the Moon. Oh, that one. Love Butler. This movie sold me on him playing younger Val Kilmer in Heat 2. I wasn't sure about Comer's accent looking at the trailer, but after hearing the recordings of the real person she's playing, she said, yeah, now I can understand people getting annoyed of her accent. Her accent is, it's kind of out there. It's not as ridiculous as Tom Hardy, who makes her, honestly, if you compare her accent to Tom Hardy's accent or whatever you want to, I don't think it's really an accent. I think he's doing like Bugs Bunny. He's doing his Bugs Bunny impression. It makes her sound normal and tolerable. She gets the majority of like narration like in this film. And it didn't, at first I was like, that's a choice, but then after a while it kind of just blends in. You kind of go with it, Yeah, he's doing it's a more exaggerated version of his Eddie Brock voice. I think it goes far beyond his Eddie Brock voice. Well, at least Norman Reedus is doing something other than Daryl on The Walking Dead. Well, he's good in the movie. He's doing something other than Daryl. That's true. I liked it, but because I've sort of wanted another Easy Rider type movie, and then this was close enough, I could see why it might have felt longer than it was. Yeah, it's a little slow. I don't know. It's just not the crime movie that it's advertised as. I actually advise people do not watch the trailers for this film because it's just not accurate to what the movie actually is. I just agree with him lighting up on the voice. Thought he got worse as the movie went. Oh shit! I don't know. Maybe I just got used to it. As I was watching the film, I was like, it doesn't sound as ridiculous. But fair. Chris hates Tom Hardy because he threatens his sex appeal. Oh no, Tom Hardy's he's got them big lips. He's an attractive man. He's a sexy man. I think the thing is, like, I was when I first started seeing Tom Hardy. I think for me, my first exposure to him was Inception. You know, was that Christopher Nolan movie. I thought he was great. I was like, who the fuck's this guy? I think for a lot of people that was their first introduction to him. And then I eventually saw Bronson and stuff. It's like, oh shit, you know. And then I don't know. I think ever since The Dark Knight Rises, he's just gotten more and more ridiculous. Just another cartoony voice, and I'm just like, yeah. Just don't really care for him all that much, to be perfectly honest. And I think here he's just not cast well, you know. Or if he just didn't do these weird voices, it'd be a lot better. If he just had a regular American accent, I think it would be fine. But I think maybe he just struggles with accents, you know, and he's just made it a part of his thing, you know, his whole performances across the board. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work. But yeah, his shtick. Yeah, exactly. It's a shtick, and it's a shtick I'm fucking sick of. I don't like it. I don't think it's working. Matter of fact, I think it's taking me out. It's taking me out of the movies now with him. But yeah, Bikeriders chat. You know, pretty disappointing film. I think it's Jeff Nichols' worst movie. It's not an awful movie. It's not awful. You know, I wouldn't say it's bad, but it's just disappointing. But I can suppose some people in the chat that did like it, that did enjoy it. So there is that. And I don't want to do spoilers to the movie either because I think there's going to be some people that want to check it out. My introduction to Tom Hardy was Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises, and then Inception, and then Star Trek Nemesis, but he was good in the movie Lawless, in my opinion, with Shia LaBeouf. He had another funny voice in that movie, too.